What is up, town and sideways, you absolutely gorgeous individuals? It is another rep of League Unlock here and Mark here with you. Fine, feathered individuals for what, on paper should be a matchup. The best rivalry in the LPL right now, I would say, at least going back from Split 2. We're talking ALBLG, and looked like, it was a fun back and forth series for 2 games, and then the third game rolls around, and when a highlight video for a game pops up and it's 17 minutes long, which by the way was a similar length to the entire T1 KT series, but we'll get to that later. But game 3 here is one of the best of Split 3. I know we're very early and might be best game of the year contender, because this had everything from terrible throws, individual outplays, team strategy, split second decision making, and it all starts with a 9K gold lead for BLG. They look ready to roll this game over, and all it takes is one overdive. I've never seen 4 guys all bum rush into a misfortune ulti.
Everybody going on the Leroy Jenkins train into that misfortune ult this time around. You're right. This has to be, without question to me, one of the top 3 regular season games that we will get this year. And I put that caveat there because I know we have already been spoiled on the international stage with some of these fantastic games that we have been getting. No question, this one will be one of the very best that you will see on the domestic schedule. I don't care what region you are going to. This third game really did deliver it, and you're right. It kind of felt like the first 2 games of this series, the back and forth on both sides of it. It was the TV series. Game 3 was the featured movie that you got to go through in this franchise. And yes, you had all that drama pretty much up until that crucial misfortune ultimate, where it just seemed like, whether it was desperation or a brain off type of moment, everybody's full sending it right into the damage.
And again, anytime somebody has a 9K gold lead and ends up losing the game, there had to be some suspect throws that happened, and there were multiple from BLG. Also multiple fantastic saves and defenses from AL. They lose both their Nexus turrets. Shanks finds a shuffle on the Yunara of Elk to catch him out when BLG look ready to close the game. And then we have one of these Elder flips where, unbelievably, BLG decide to engage on Elk. When you see the Nocturne ulti ticking down, there's 5 seconds to go on this cooldown for Shadow, and for whatever reason they say, yeah, let's engage before that's up.
And it's one of these crucial moments where it just is one of the expectations of a professional has to be within that mindset, understanding what the limits are, and knowing, especially when that timer is so close, and in one of these type of moments to just rush it, pull that hair trigger, not the response that you needed to be seeing. And again, kind of crazy that you're looking through this whole lens of this game. You're seeing some of the most amazing stats and influence from Bin in this game. And that one death, that's it. That's all that it takes in one of these type of situations when it is that type of game, that close and that late in the series. Really is one of these ones where, again, the drama, the fireworks, it's all there. And this ain't the first time that BLG and anyone's legend have stepped up to the plate and delivered like this for the LPL.
Yeah, 10-1 and 20, the final scoreline for Bin in a loss on that Ornn. He was absolutely a raid boss, and Hope needed all the peel that he could possibly get in this series. But again, it goes so back and forth on the teeter-totter. AL is pushing on the Nexus, turrets are down, but BLG just holds. Knight pops a Zanya's with like 20 HP. Then you think maybe BLG is going to win. And then we get the 3rd Elder Dragon of the game. And of course, it just comes down to a massive flip, and Tarzan gets the last lap with a clean smite to secure it, and then it ends up being an ace, and AL finally closes it out from there. 50 minutes and 66 kills. Still a kill per minute in a 50-minute game.
That, and again, in the decisive game, right? So many times in the LCK, heck, throw in the Western regions as well, we get that final decisive game. It is very tentative. It is very risk averse in these ones. Not so whatsoever you saw in this game, and you could expect that from the LPL, but certainly what we have been treated to from BLG and Anyone's Legend in their history and past together at this point, I would expect nothing less from both of these guys. And I think at the end of the day, this is a good result for the LPL because you are coming away feeling better about both of these teams. I think you see that type of tenacity, that type of fight, and push towards that top level from BLG that we all want to see them get back towards and occupy in the LPL. And meanwhile, Anyone's Legend, we've needed them to start ramping it up, start putting together impressive results after MSI. And I think you can absolutely throw this series into that category.
And obviously, first loss for BLG, first series loss that we have on the split, and a massive statement game for Anyone's Legend, who needed this win way more than a 7-0 BLG. Now AL gets back to 500, but more importantly to me is this has got to be a confidence boost to win the series in this fashion after being down nearly 10K against your main rival and the top squad in the LPL.
That confidence boost for sure. I think one of the other, kind of unwritten under the reeds type of thing that not a lot of people might talk about is looking at some of the controversy that has been around Anyone's Legend recently, Shank specifically, within the social media scene, and getting a result like this, absolutely, it doesn't absolve anything type of thing, but I think you can look at any previous player, any traditional sport, whatever, anytime there is outside noise, good or bad, if you're able to put up results, you're able to get signature wins and moment type of things, a lot of that is easier to manage, whether that's right or wrong. And I think for this Anyone's Legend team, getting a big win, a signature moment like this is big time. Game 3 against a big time opponent in BLG is going to go a long way to ease a lot of the things outside of the Rift, but not just that. They needed to ease some things on the Rift, given the way things had started out this split.
And it's probably also a good move for BLG because, again, clearly there were some sloppy moments. We always see this squad. It happened in some of the World Elite games. They get a little, they get a big lead. They get a little lazy going through the motions. And finally, they're punished for it. And hopefully they look at this and go, okay, maybe we do need to shore some things up and make sure we're closing games out cleanly, especially against the other top competition in the LPL.
I think that it should be no question whether it's a humility thing or not. There has to be that admission on the side of BLG that Anyone's Legend is going to be one of your competitors, is going to be a rival at that top tier within your region. Can you step up to it, which we know is that tough challenge? I think this was a much better effort that we have seen from BLG and much more put together, but it's still one of those ones that comes away with the reminder that margin, what it takes to be on top and stay on top of a squad like Anyone's Legend, wasn't good enough today and need to clean up a couple of those things, specifically, again, looking back egregiously at that Nocturne 5-second timer, just pulling it too early.
Yeah, and obviously people are gonna, meme and have been memeing the honeymoon phase for junglers, and Shadow now losing his first series means you got to replace him, send someone in. A call like that is usually equal parts. You got to hear the comms. Shadow could be screaming, "My ult's up in 5 seconds," but Bin wants to go in. There's a lot of intricacies that go on in the pro comms that we don't have access to. Sometimes we do until later, but don't just harp on Shadow for a play like that. We had some other big boys in the LPL as well. Obviously didn't live up quite to the hype that we got in that Game 3 from BLG AL, but Top Esports and JDG also played a competitive back and forth 3-game set. We got to see some life out of JDG, and we got to see Scout going from bonehead to hero within a single game, and unfortunately it's more on the bone side of things than the hero for Game 3.
Yeah, I was going to say, at the very least, you had me in the early game, and then all of a sudden we're slipping off into that third game and doesn't continue, is the way that we were wanting things to be for Scout. And it's kind of refreshing because we were just having that conversation just a short day ago, looking at the global power rankings where JDG can find themselves in that, murky mist of that 20 to 10 type of region, and how can they improve and impress to put yourselves in that top 10, that 10 where you start to consider the world championship quarterfinals. Who are you knocking out in these type of spots? JDG is not one of the teams that you're going to envision there without Scout performing like he did in this series to a small margin, because you only got a tiny serving of it, because too much of it was the Scout we have known this year. And that Scout is beyond expiration date, is what we have seen so far. And leave it to the trash men of top esports to be taking it out.
Yeah, and Joao on JDG continues to be, I'll give him the rating. He missed some bra multis and different skill shots throughout the set, and especially when you're matching up how well Hong has fit in this TES lineup and how Jackie Love has looked like the premier AD carry in the LPL right now. And it's kind of the same themes for both of these squads. Pays trying his best to lift this team through, and we get Kanavi on a coveted pick like the Nefiri, who has definitely fallen out of the meta as of late, but he put up a pretty solid showing on the Doge.
He's got the skills to make anything work in that type of situation, especially one that is wanting to be as aggressive as on that line, like a Neferi will be at times. So I like seeing that one on the top esports side. And I think that it's important to mention, looking at that bottom lane for top esports with Hong in that bottom lane and going off of how much that bot buddy, right, that support can elevate when you have a top tier ADC, one of these elite guys like a Jackie Love, like a Pays on the other side. And this is the difference that you see within those supports and how you're able to, not only on the individual level, but when you're working in that duo system and get yourself to that next level, having that support elevate that play of your elite ADC is a big difference maker. You're not seeing it on the side of JDG, despite the skill and efforts that we are seeing and can verify for someone like Pays. Just look over on the top esports side and how you're able to explode with a guy like Jackie Love when you get him the right support.
And obviously with the BLG loss now, top esports takes a win, and they're 8-1 now, sitting atop the LPL table, which can obviously shift at any moment, and people will never fully be satisfied with top esports, even if they sweep their way through the entire playoff run over in the LPL. Remember when we had the telecom war and it was actually a rivalry? Even though T1 might win most of the time, you got this banger series, crazy back and forth, long-winded games. Well, the rivalry is no more. It's gone, because we had 49 minutes total on the Rift in the latest installment, and the beatings just continue as KT basically just gets pushed around. Hanwha Life pushes them so that Genji can punch them in the face. They get knocked over to T1, who elbows them in the jaw, and it's just, oh man, especially the second game where they're just camping the living daylights out of Doran, and he still is turning around 1v2s, and T1 gets 33 kills in 26 minutes.
Oh, baby. Yes, the telecom war, nowhere to be found this year, given the efforts that we are seeing on the side of KT Rolster and the power that we are seeing on the side of T1, the form that they have seemingly been occupying since the international event of MSI and the run that we have had from there, with a small exception of running into the, again, incredible machine that is Gen G and that type of test up in here with the rest of the heavyweights. It feels like, I wanted to say throwing a Volkswagen Beetle into a heavy demolition derby with a bunch of 18-wheeler trucks is the way that it is for KT right now. I don't even know if they're a Volkswagen Beetle. I think this is just a guy out there on a bicycle out with the rest of these wrecking derby cars. And the damage that he would take, that's what you're seeing out there for this KT squad. We talked about it yesterday that, there is some understanding, there is some credit that is given over knowing the quality and tier that you are playing up against for this top tier, top area of the LCK. But you still need to find a way to do damage. You still need to find a way to show that you are progressing towards this level of competition. You're not seeing that from this squad in KT Rolster. And I think pretty much the only guy that is going to get any sort of pass, and he doesn't get the full complete pass because it has been so bad, is BDD. And again, we've talked about that so many times, the effort and skill that he still has and is putting in for this team, and the results that we are seeing everywhere else for this team is not enough right now. And it's one of the most frustrating stories, I think you could call it, so far this year in League of Legends, the absence of KT Rolster amongst the scene in the LCK.
And I mean, it doesn't matter what BDD was doing. The bot lane gap was so gargantuan in this series that it didn't matter. There's a lot of eye-popping stats you could pull from this series, but I'm going to go with your boy Wei in the bot lane. Had 19 deaths in these 2 games. T1 as a team, all 5 members combined, had 15 deaths across this series. So Wei died more than the entirety of T1 in this set.
That's never a positive factor when you're talking about something like that. And I think especially you can even just look at the page of the game too. Have we ever seen a Jhin quite have that type of power, that type of confidence to take that 4 strut walk all the way around Summoner's Rift, never feeling like he was going to be in danger? I mean, part of that is due to the swagger and confidence that Gumayusi brings to, I think, every champion, but especially with the type of lead and advantages that T1 was playing with throughout this series.
Yeah, I mean, 15, 0, and 10 on that one, and he's getting solo kills on Doc Dom. He's just rolling up, spamming a W and an ulti and cleaning up all these kills. It was a roaming Jhin across the board, but I don't know if any team feels more tilting to play against right now than T1, and that's the combination of they're legit styling on people. Curious running around in a Rift Herald, running people over, and the fact that these guys seem to survive on sub 100 HP more than any other team in the entire game.
I think there's previous years you'd be able to stomach it, right? You'd be able to find a way to write it off as, okay, that is the exception. This is phenomenal, whatever. They're the runaway. I can take my lumps in that type of situation. They're not the only one doing this in the LCK. And I think that's one of those realizations that this is now going to be the standard, the expectation for being at that top, for being the best, the label of the champion for the region is going to take this type of effort, this type of skill, this type of expression. Can you deliver it? KT is miles in that rear view mirror when you're looking at that. And I think even a squad like Hanwha Life is finding, where's my engine power? We're struggling to keep up with the impressive feats that we are continuing to see by T1, by a Gen G here in the LCK. And this series, no exception with how much ahead T1 was than KT.
KT took the wrong turnoff on the road, on the highway, can't see T1, and then they hit a big pothole and blew a tire. At the same time, a rock hit their windshield. They can't even see out of the car right now, but they got to keep going. They got to try and catch up to these squads, and yeah, it's a long road ahead for KT. I will say, whenever they match up against somebody that isn't the top 3 in the LCK, maybe they'll actually be having a fun time on the Rift. Will BDD and the boys. A little update potential to the game. We're going off the Rift, and everyone's talking about, doesn't matter if you're team WASD or team WASD, but this was out of the blue, an announcement that they're looking to implement a control change option that's going to obviously be a long time before it's being rushed out, going through PBE, normal games, not going into ranked for a long time. But the fact that they're talking about this, I don't see how this can be implemented in a competitive sense, because it seems, you've heard people talk about how kiting would be different when you can use that WASD as a movement control, kind of gets rid of the hardest part of what orb walking would be. This seems impossible to balance, to have players both playing point and click and WASD. It seems it has to be one or the other.
I don't come across as too much of a boomer here at this point, but this is a step too far. A technology that we should not be messing with at this point in time. We know that these real-time strategy, the MOBA genre, I don't think that we should be entering too much into anything away from the point and click type of control method that we have right now. And that's not simply, I don't want, new technology, fancy stuff. I don't want that. That's not the situation. This is one of those ones where I've been like you. I've stepped into ARAM. I've been away from the game sometimes. And of course, you go to the WASD, WASD is the control method thinking, and then you correct yourself type of thing. But I think, again, it goes a little bit deeper than that when you're talking about it. As you mentioned, stuff like kiting, these type of control methods. Adding that would be such a departure for me and would be such a difference that you couldn't balance the two factors without providing, unless it's one where, again, you're not getting any sort of benefit, any type of change, which then begs the question of why adding in this type of thing, putting the resources towards implementing it in the game. For me, if you want that control in this type of genre, go different, make it third person, go down that type of avenue where we have had games in this genre have that type of control scheme. That's where I feel it can be impactful. It can be balanced and utilized in a right way. I don't envision it working here for League of Legends.
Yeah, the only way I really see it is if you do have kind of a separate game mode almost, and then you could, maybe you're even zooming in to get closer to your character and then having that movement, because it just almost feels like these other battle royales or like Call of Duty where you have console players playing separately against PC, right? Because it just doesn't feel right. There would be no way to ever balance this professionally. You couldn't have some guys playing point and click and some guys having it wouldn't work.
Well, it'd be pretty much the question there. The example here for that is, well, why don't we have Wild Rift players and controls in for regular League of Legends right now? Because it is very different to have that type of input, that type of aspect of control within your scheme in comparison to that mouse and click, point and click that we have been operating off of. And again, so much of that we see, again, Faker, how many times he's going all the way across his screen, all these type of things. Again, I feel like this is going to come across too much as old man doesn't want these things, doesn't want new things in his game, whatever. That's not the type of angle that I'm trying to take here, but I can promise you that I think that this is going to cause way more headaches than it ever could be worth here on either a competitive level or even all the way down to the recreational level.
And you feel like the intricate, movement and juking that pro players are doing with tiny clicks would just be completely lost if you replaced it with this movement. So we'll see how this develops. We'll see how up in arms the community gets, because sometimes, just sometimes, Riot does actually listen to what community feedback is. But that is all the time today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you. Absolute beauties. Thanks so much for hanging out. We'll catch you on that flippity flip.